name is Rachael, and today I'm bringing you some of my favorite books with names in the title. So I got the idea for this video at the Top 10 Tuesday list, which I will link down below. So I've decided to come up with 10 that I highly recommend, a couple of honorable mentions, and then to tell you about a few that are on my TBR that I haven't read yet. So let's start with my favorite ones that I have read. So first up, in no particular order by the way, we have How to Be Golden, Lessons We Can Learn from Betty White. This is by Paula Bernstein, and this is basically a kind of summation of Betty White's life, pinpointing lessons that we can learn from Betty White. It was a very fun read, especially if you're a Betty White fan, which who isn't? The next one is a children's picture book. It's called Thelma the Unicorn by Erin Blavey. This is one of my all-time favorite picture books. It's about this little well, technically she's a horse, and she wants to be a unicorn. And through some weird turn of events, she does, in fact, kind of become a unicorn, and then she becomes famous, and she realizes that fame kind of comes with a price. And, oh, I love this book. There is a follow-up as well that also has the name Thelma in the title, so that would work as well. Then I have a graphic novel called My Friend Dahmer by Durf Backdurf, and this is the account of our author's friendship with Jeffrey Dahmer in high school before his crimes. So very interesting to see the lead up to such a infamous figure. And then we also have Nimona, which is a graphic novel by Noelle Stevenson. I love this graphic novel. Nimona is our main character, and instead of siding with the quote-unquote good guy, she decides to be the assistant to the bad guy. And it's just so cute. It really plays with the idea of what is good and what is bad, and I really, really enjoy this. I think you will too. Next up is The Blood of Emmett Till by Timothy B. Tyson. This is a true life account of a boy named Emmett Till who was lynched in the 50s because he allegedly whistled at a white woman. And this is very heart-wrenching. So all of the warnings, all the content warnings for this, because it does involve with obviously racism, murder, all the awful things that come with a situation like that. So be warned, but it is a very important read, and it's definitely worth the struggle to get through all the details to know about this boy. And this is going to be a hard read because it's graphic and it makes you so angry and so sad at the same time. So just know that going into it, but it is definitely a book you should read. Then a little bit lighter, we have There's Something About Sweetie by Sandhya Menon. This is the second book in the When Dimple Met Rishi universe. So mostly any book in the series would work, but I highlighted this one because I don't talk about it a lot and I love it. I think this might actually be my favorite one. We have two characters here that are lovable, but they are possibly struggling with some issues about how they feel about themselves, and it's just so sweet. I really enjoyed the idea of their kind of structured dates through their Indian parents, and oh my gosh, I just think it was so cute. I loved this one. Then again, another dark one. This is Sadie by Courtney Summers. This is a fictional account of a missing girl through a true crime podcast. So we get one chapter that is from Sadie's point of view, and then one chapter from the true crime point of view, and it's very fascinating, but very, very dark. Next up is Aurora Rising by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I am not huge on science fiction books, but I loved this one. There was a heist involved and a long-lost girl who'd been basically cryogenically frozen, I guess, in space, and I just really love this ragtag team that came together, and sadly I have not read more in the series, but I own them and I hope to soon, and they all have Aurora in the title, so any of the books in the series will work. Another kind of dark one is Jane Anonymous by Lori Faria Stellars, and this book is amazing. I've read it twice now. It's about a girl who is abducted and all the emotional stuff that goes on while she's abducted and after she's returned home, and It's dark, it's twisty, and it literally just like breaks my heart, but it's such a good book. And last up in my top 10 is another picture book. It's Nachos, the story behind the world's favorite snack by Sandra Nickel, illustrated by Oliver Dominguez. And I love reading this book with the kids this year. It tells the story of how nachos came to be and why they're called nachos. And the kids loved it. It was fascinating because they've all had nachos. So this is something they can relate to and understand. And it was really fun to read. So I would highly recommend Nachos. Some honorable mentions I have for you. These are ones that I initially thought of, but probably aren't in my top 10 for various reasons. The first one is Al Capone Does My Shirts by Jennifer Jolinko. I think the reason this one didn't make it in my top 10 is because it's been so long since I've read this book. But this is about a young person who moves to live on Alcatraz Island when his father gets a job to work at Alcatraz. Next up is one that I was iffy about, and that's Darkly Dreaming Dexter by Jeff Lindsay. This is the first book in the Dexter series that inspired the show Dexter. And I must say that I liked the show better than I liked the book. So I have not continued reading, but I have watched all of Dexter. So it's something to consider if you really like Dexter, but I personally liked the show better. Next up, I have The Adoration of Jenna Fox by Mary E. Pearson. And again, I think it's just because it's been so long since I've read this book. But this is about a girl who was in a very serious accident. I believe she's the only one that might have survived. But when she's coming out of her coma, she realizes the extent they have gone to keep her alive. And it's very interesting, very suspenseful. I have read the first 2 books, I think, but I never finished the last one. So maybe I'll have to go back and reread the first 2 so I can finish out the series. And last up is Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. This is the story of a girl who seems to be kind of lonely, so she creates this really insane online world. Like, she creates this webcomic that really blows up, and people don't know that she's the creator. And then she ends up meeting a boy who is like the #1 fan, and she kind of starts a relationship with him without really telling him who she is, and, you know, just contemporary drama. I think the reason this didn't make my top 10 is just for personal reasons. It deals a lot with mental health struggles, and that was just very hard for me to read. But as long as you're okay with that and that doesn't, you know, really trigger you, then I think you'll really like this book. It was very interesting. We read it for book club, and I think most of us really enjoyed the read. So next up, I have some that are on my TBR that I really want to get to. First up is Alias Grace. I actually have seen the show. I think it was on Netflix, but I haven't read the book, and I've been trying to kind of put some distance between the show and reading the book. So I'm hoping to get to that pretty soon. But yeah, Alias Grace by Margaret Atwood. It's about an Irish lady who moves over to the U.S. and ends up becoming a housekeeper, etc. And one of the people who has hired her ends up murdered. And we really get to all of the story through her conversations with this psychologist that's interviewing her from jail. So very, very interesting. I really hope to get to that book. Another one that I really, really want to get to, but I just feel like it's going to be so hard to read emotionally. That's The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. This is about a woman who basically had her body used without her permission for scientific advancements. And I believe her cells contributed to a lot of very popular medical advancements that help us today. But the problem is that she never really gave consent. Her family didn't give consent because she was a Black woman. They just took these cells and used them without anybody's consent. So I think this will be very interesting, but like I said, I feel like it's going to be kind of dark. So I'm not so sure about when I'm going to get to that, but I do want to. Another one I want to get to is a middle grade read that I've heard amazing things about and somehow have never managed to read, and that's Escape from Mr. Limoncello's Library by Chris Grabenstein. And this is about a game where they're trying to escape the library to win a prize, and it just sounds amazing. I need to get on this series. And next up, we have Lizzie by Dawn Ias. This is supposed to be kind of a queer reimagining of Lizzie Borden. So I'm very interested in this because I love reading about Lizzie Borden stuff, and anything about Lizzie Borden would work for this as well. But I have this on my TBR, and I'd really like to read it and see the kind of retelling elements that they come up with. And then the last two are series that I have not even started that would all work for this. The first one is the Brown Sisters series by Talia Hibbert. I'm hoping to get to Get a Life, Chloe Brown this year. But essentially we're following three sisters in these three books that are all finding love, and I am super excited to get to them. I've heard just amazing things. So first up for me is going to be Get a Life, Chloe Brown this year. And then next up we have the Lady Jane series, and then they just started a Mary series. So the first one is My Lady Jane. This is by a team of authors, Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. They had several books in the Lady Jane series, and I know they just started some with Mary. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I think the first one's called My Contrary Mary, and now they're going to go through all of the Marys in history. And that's essentially what these series do. They take famous stories about women whose name is in their series name, and they reimagine them in this very fantastical way. So for instance, there was one about Jane Eyre that involved like ghost hunters, ghosts, and all these elements. And it's very like tongue-in-cheek about the content material that they're using to base their story on, and they seem really fun. I've never completed one of these books though. I've read chunks of several of them for various reasons, but I've never finished a complete one. So I would like to do that eventually because I think these will be fascinating. So there you have the ones I recommend, the ones that are honorable mentions, and the ones I'm hoping to get to, all including names in the title. If you have any recommendations, definitely leave them down below. Have you read any of the books that I mentioned here? Let's talk about them down in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again in another video soon. Bye for now.